Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Evan, you have breaking details on the Mueller investigation. What's the very latest?
That's right, Wolf. The Mueller investigators have been anything but quiet in the past month, even though, obviously, because of the November elections, the special counsel has not done anything public in the past, during this past month. Among the things that have been happening behind the scenes is this Paul Manafort, the former chairman of the Trump campaign, has been into the special counsel now as many as 9 times, giving dozens of hours of interviews to the special counsel team as part of his cooperation deal after pleading guilty to the special counsel charges last month. Also behind the scenes, Michael Cohen has been providing hours of testimony to the Mueller team as well as prosecutors from the Southern District of New York. And also behind the scenes, talks have intensified between the special counsel and the president's lawyers. As you know, Wolf, they have now received questions from the special counsel, from the investigators, and those lawyers, the president's lawyers, are now going through trying to provide written answers to the questions that have now been received from the Mueller team. And also, another part of this investigation, which has to do with Roger Stone. We know that as many as 9 people associated with Roger Stone have now received subpoenas as part of the investigation. We know that at least a couple of those people have been having talks with the special counsel to provide information as part of this investigation. A lot going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's very widespread, I must say. So what do you expect from Mueller right after the November midterms, only less than 3 weeks away?
Right. We expect that right after we will see activity pick up, and that includes expected indictments that the special counsel team has been working on. That we expect is going to happen very quickly after the November elections. And then, Wolf, what the expectation is in the legal circle, certainly among the president's lawyers, is the possibility that a report, whatever report Mueller has produced, will go up to Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, sometime perhaps in December. Of course, the timeline here is everyone's guess. Mueller is not saying anything publicly. We know that because of these negotiations that have been going on behind the scenes, that it is possible this type of timeline will slip even further.
And we know the president told the Associated Press yesterday that he has a new White House counsel coming in, Pat Cipollone, to replace Don McGahn. What difference is that going to make?
Well, what this does, it signals at least internally to the Trump team that they're getting ready, Wolf, for what is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight with the Democrats. They expect, obviously, that the Democrats will take control of one of the houses of Congress, perhaps the House of Representatives, in the November election. And so what they expect is that the Democrats are going to launch a whole raft of new investigations of the executive branch. And, of course, they're going to start fighting for access to whatever Mueller has found. Keep in mind that the Mueller's findings only go to Rod Rosenstein. They don't necessarily automatically go to Congress. So if the Democrats have control of the House of Representatives, they will have to perhaps launch a legal fight to be able to get to certain findings that the Trump team believes are protected by executive privilege. We expect, by the way, that Cipollone is going to take over in the next couple of weeks. I'm told, by the way, Wolf, that Cipollone was a bit surprised that the announcement came as it did in the president's interview with the Associated Press. This was something that was perhaps going to come down in another couple of weeks. Don McGahn is still inside the White House. So this was going to be a rollout, but as often happens, unscripted in this Trump presidency. This was done in an Associated Press interview. Yeah.
What a douche. So here is what all that adds up to. Mueller is going through the quiet period because we have an election. And there's an unwritten rule. It's not a written rule. It's not hard and fast, but there is a certain feeling in the investigative part of our government that you don't throw things out there right ahead of an election because you could influence the voters. I don't get why You wouldn't, as a voter, want to know if the president or his son or sons are going to be indicted. I don't know why before the election we don't get to know if Roger Stone was talking to Julian Assange and coordinating document dumps on Hillary Clinton ahead of last year's, the 2016 election. I don't know why we don't get to know if what Michael Cohen is giving Robert Mueller. Michael Cohen has spent 50 hours with Robert Mueller over the past few weeks. Apparently, Manafort gets out of prison to go talk to Mueller. I mean, it's probably a good deal for him. It's the only time he gets out of prison. The former campaign manager for Donald Trump is in prison, but he gets out 9 times to go speak to Robert Mueller. And think about that. I mean, Manafort's already been convicted, right? Already been convicted, and then did a plea deal to get out of a second trial. And in that plea deal, he agreed to cooperate with Robert Mueller, who already had enough evidence, enough documentary evidence, enough witness testimony, enough of everything to indict him. So they already have all the papers that anybody would need on Manafort because he's already been convicted, and Mueller's still interested in things he has to say, to the point where he's calling him in 9 different times over the last month. 9 times he gets out of jail to go talk to Mueller. It's a nice day to get out of prison like that, Roger Stone, 9 people have been called to testify about his activities. 9 people. Some of them are discussing plea deals. His associate, this kid who's known to us, because he's the booker. He's the guy that booked Roger Stone on all these wackadoodle, radio shows that actually allowed Roger Stone to spew his stupidity all over the place. So a lot of the bookers, in this business know Roger Stone's kid. But the kid actually, refuses to testify, and he's being held in contempt. But the other 9 are making deals. Why can't we know before the election? I just find it so fascinating that we can't know. So that's why voting now is so important, because you won't know. And then can you imagine if you find out after the election that the president's son did conspire with Russian intelligence, did conspire with WikiLeaks, that Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, was taking, foreign money to influence an election, or that he can be bought off by, Saudis, or he can order a blockade against Qatar because they didn't want to finance 666 Fifth Avenue, and his daddy got mad. I mean, I would want to know this before the election, but the way that it's set up is there's this unwritten rule the way you just don't do it. You just don't do it. It's just not done. So we have to wait till after the election. And once the election is done, what's Donald Trump going to do? He's going to fire the attorney general, who's already recused himself, Jeff Sessions, right? He's going to fire him. And then he's going to fire Rod Rosenstein, who will get the report. Here's the deal. Mueller's report only goes to Rod Rosenstein. It doesn't go to Congress. It certainly doesn't go to us. It goes to Rod Rosenstein. And if Trump knows it's coming to that office, Trump will fire Rod Rosenstein, so it goes to somebody else. And that person will get interviewed, and they will pledge loyalty to Donald Trump never to release that report. And then, depending on, can you imagine Devin Nunes still, after the election, being the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, or Bob Goodlatte still being the chairman of the Judiciary Committee? You'll never see that report. You will never know anything about nothing. I'm sorry, but that's just not a way to say sunlight is the best disinfectant. We have a transparent government. Oh, please. They will bury that report so deep up Donald Trump's fat ass that you will never, ever, ever see it. Sorry about the visual. But, you got our national security advisor, Michael Flynn. He's got to be sentenced after the election. You got Michael Cohen, the president's personal attorney. He's going to be sentenced after the election. You've got Paul Manafort, who's been 9 times to Mueller's office. He's got to be sentenced after the election. You got Roger Stone. Everybody's wondering if he'll be indicted. You know, I mean, all of this stuff now, all of this stuff, whether or not you have a majority in the House and Senate is going to be determinative of what happens if and when we find, and can you imagine a split government? This is why, Arizona, I am begging you. I really am. Aren't you at least curious? And, you know, if there's nothing else on the ballot that you give a rat's ass about, shouldn't it be your own curiosity and satisfying it? You do know that if we have a Republican Senate, this president could be fingered as being a crook, a criminal, a traitor to this country, and Mitch McConnell will never, ever remove him. And we will go through the last 2 years of this criminal president's reign of terror to the point where he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and nothing would happen to him. I mean, honestly, you know how frustrated we would be if you had a House that actually did make sure that you saw this report and then we found out that everything that, I mean, it's worse than we thought, that he literally ripped off every investor. He literally took money from Russia. He literally, was getting orders from the Kremlin. The Saudis own him lock, stock, and barrel. Jared Kushner is an evil twin. Jared Kushner did go to Saudi Arabia and did take classified information in the presidential daily brief, which is what's being alleged here. That, you know, Jared Kushner got permission from Donald Trump because Jared Kushner lost his security clearance because he lied on his disclosure forms. And the president can give him whatever he wants because the president can declassify anything, including the presidential daily brief. Now, we know that the president was allowing Jared, without a security clearance, to read the presidential daily brief. And guess what was in those documents? All the people in Saudi Arabia who were not completely thrilled or sold on Prince Mohammed bin Salman, that bearded freak who tortures people. They weren't completely sold on him taking over Saudi Arabia because he was not in the line of succession. This was a coup. And a lot of people inside Saudi Arabia were not, up for this. Their names were in the presidential daily brief as being not friendly to this guy. Jared is accused of, now this is alleged, that Jared saw these names in the presidential daily brief and he went on the trip where they all held the orb and told the Saudis who inside the family, because it's a family thing, who inside the family was the Fredo, right? And right after Jared, he went in June, he went back in October, and he went back in May. And right after Jared gave him the names, that's when he started kidnapping these people, and he tortured one guy to death in the Ritz-Carlton. I swear to God, this is where they torture people in Saudi. But they do it because the family is so rich that they knew that they would show up at the Ritz-Carlton. You know, you're not going to get the rich bastards in the Saudi royal family to go to some back alley, right? So they had to come up with an excuse to have the family gathering at a very fine place, so they picked the Ritz-Carlton. Well, once they got there, he literally kidnapped all of them, and he started torturing them. And one of them was tortured to death. The other ones were coerced into giving their fortunes to the kingdom so that they would have a vested interest in him doing well. Ooh, it's inscrutable, isn't it? And they say that all the information about who the Fredos were came from Jared. Now, don't you want to know if that's true? Just the sheer curiosity. And you won't unless you have an opposition party to check this presidency and his nepotism. What does Jared have that qualifies? He's a failed real estate guy who's desperate for money. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.